Story 1. Every day is the same. The clock rings to wake us up in our side-by-side beds. In rows we get up, synchronized after years of routine. Intact with each other, we make our beds, beat by beat, the same every day. We walk in one neat line out to brush our teeth, our hair standing upright, sleep long since away from our minds. The mirror we look into are all the same uniform circles, and the faces we see look so much alike now that we can look at each other and see ourselves. We put on our white dresses, our clean white shoes, wide white smiles, plastered on in a row of discomfort, hid away. In one voice we sing. No one sings out of tune. This is what years of singing one song sounds like. That is what they want, perfection. My shoes creak slightly. Our shoes never creak. They are all made to move silently across the floor. But mine do. I have to walk carefully, putting more pressure on my toes. They press against the hard shell of the shoes. They are too small for me now. I am not supposed to grow. I make up for the shoes by standing rank, rigid in my back, the epitome of perfect posture. Every gathering is the same. They stand in front of us, giving their daily speech. Our leader stands in the middle, speaking all the words while they nod along. His eyes are kind, but we have seen what horror those white hands have committed. Seen the blood from a slapped face bleed over them, paint them. We listen as we do every day, with eagerness, hiding our fear in our perfect reactions. You who stand in the back think you are blessed, but they see everything. They see every misstep. Do not ever let your shoes creak. My foot moves slightly. I rested on my leg for too long, and the shoe creaks, so silently that if they hadn't been thinking of it, it could have been anything, but they are always thinking about it. The girl beside me looks at me, only with her eyes still unmoving. I see her worry. We all know what happens when our shoes creak. She averts her eyes back to the speaker, unwilling to let my fate hurt hers. I have to put every effort into not reacting. It will do me no good. We know they wait. We know they do not interrupt the speaker. Before routine, we had mothers, fathers. We know not to think of them. We know they are no more. But every night I lay in my perfect sleeping position, flat down on my back, as we all do, and I think of them, as we all must do. No one moves in their sleep now. I know, for I stay awake when they do not. And in the dark, I cannot hear even a breath or a choked cry. We do not share with each other. We do not speak. We know what happens when we speak. He was charismatic. He made a good point. Our mothers told us so before, when they still were. He promised redemption more than life. They all believed him in their desperation. How could such a kind man commit cruelties? We know he is not kind. We never trust him. The windows in our room, where our beds stand in perfectly made lines, cannot open, and the light that shines through them seems to not be real. It shines with an unnatural hue, too red to be the sun. I have not seen the sun for years, months, decades. We do not know time now. We cannot follow the silent glow of the moon with our hopeful eyes. We have neither now. We leave the gathering, leaving in a perfect line. Every day it's the same order. They think it is, but they do not see us as different. The line is different every day. Our only rebellion. If we had not a lamp, the room would be dark. We walk, I in the back, to the meal, the only one we get. We do not like the meal. We are scared of their food. They killed our mothers with food. We sit in our perfect lines and eat the food with practiced care. We have seen what happens to those who do not take their time, those who do not sit with perfect posture. The meal is the same. We do not know what it is. We eat, for it is what we must. I have longed for the light of the sun. I have hungered for the page of a book, the sound of my mother's voice. I have wanted to take their pretty white paper, wanted to throw it on the ground to put my less than perfect footstep on it. Let it be torn by the wildness I still have. I have wanted to run my fingertips over the metal wall to feel if it is really as cold as it looks. Do not long, do not want. Punishments come in evenings. We are all made to watch. If we react, we too are punished. We watch the blood unblinking. After years, we do not care. When we have long since forgotten our names, we cannot care. I know what is to come. I know blood. I know pain. Maybe it is all I know. Maybe it is all I will ever know. All we will ever know. I remember birds and toads. Remember the trickle of the river, how water looks when sunlight reflects in it. I regret not remembering how my mother's footsteps sounded, how her hair smelled. We cannot let ourselves remember that. We finish eating our meal, and we stand up at the same time. When the clock rings, not fast, not slow, but perfectly measured. It is more an instinct now, as if the sound creates an automatic reaction in us. We move as we always move. Our leader, our speaker, our tormentor, stands in the door, and we have to greet him as we leave. We put all the joy on our face that we can muster up. He smiles his kind, disgusting smile and prays for us. I want him to suffer. We sit for hours, like statues in a museum, perfectly cut from marble, without flaws. My shoes will creak again, and I will see my own blood. But we always see blood. I miss the air. I miss my mother. I miss learning new things about the world. I miss discovering a new crack in a floorboard. I try not to think about things. My eyes will well up, and blood will replace tears. I sit on the stage, see the 100 similar eyes look at me. I think that we're all different, even if they want to ignore it. We are not the same. We look nothing alike. My breathing is quick. I wish not to show my fear. I want our leader to know he has no power over me. He can take my life, but I live on. He doesn't know my name. He doesn't know who my mother was, but neither do I. I sit in the metal chair, and for the first time I let my fingers follow the curve of the handrest, let myself feel the coldness. He, the leader, stands before me and raises his hand, readying himself to slap me. He flexes his unseen muscles, putting all his strength into it. My cheek fears the slap, but my eyes do not. I will not let them close. I will stare at him, let him see me, see us. My heart pounds so terribly that I am sure the whole gathering can hear it. Is that allowed? I want to yell. I want to make these beings feel something. Fear, pity maybe. We know they do not feel either. We have seen necks broken from hands or rope. We have all thought of it being us. I want it to be me. I want to end this. I want it to end with me. I want us all to live again, but this is no life. I tie my own noose and spit the leader in his face. I collect all the hydration in my mouth and let it form as a ball. And I let it hit him. We know he will kill her, but she does it anyway. She ends it. His hands choke her. We know his temper. Tonight we will mourn her in our secret ways. Story 2. The smell of rotten eggs woke Harper from a dead sleep, or maybe it was the waves of intense nausea. Her innards felt like they were being stomped clean, like dirty laundry in a remote rural stream. Through eyes weary and half shut, Harper watched a red light pulse. It filled the space around her with spasmodic, blood-hued flashes. Ugh, moving wasn't high on her list of priorities. Her head was heavy. It felt like a pumpkin propped on a toothpick, and inside sloshed thoughts and images that threatened to fuse together, but instead bobbed haplessly in the groggy backwaters of her mind. She closed her eyes and turned to lay on her side. Too difficult. She motor-boated her lips. That's when the poem began. The absurd wordplay could have come straight out of the dusty vaults of Captain Beefheart. The strange sonnet danced on the tongue of some faceless woman as it corkscrewed into Harper's consciousness, like a stream of buttercream frosting atop a cake. Harper grasped at it. It evaded her clutches, verbal confetti in a breeze. Roll bed. Feel free to pull and retest it. What in the world? Toad said, its feet avulsed. Infected. Whoever was speaking whimsically sliced and diced words, the way those theatrical, knife-juggling chefs at the vintage Japanese restaurant chain, whose name escaped her, diced sushi. The vowel scheme, however, remained curiously consistent. Road blood. A vehicle dissected. She struggled to make sense of it, but she was no poet. She never had the knack. It was a God-given talent, she was always told, and in her life, she had never taken seriously even the slightest inclinations towards being an artist. When she was young, however, she dreamed of being an astronaut. She recalled how the stars outside her childhood bedroom window would whisper to her at night. They would tell her of her destiny, of her future living in their midst. Joe fled. The bees on Skull reflected. As a matter of fact, now that she thought about it, she had a faint recollection of donning a spacesuit at one time. One limb at a time, into the suit, a silent dance, a sacred ritual, all in preparation for sleep. Again came the verse. But this time, the words cut through the mental murk and dripped with a sobering clarity. Code red. Debris on hull detected. Oh God, she thought. Harper blinked herself awake. She swam up through the mental soup, lifted a hand, and pawed at the mask that was pumping oxygen and hydrogen sulfide into her lungs. She finally pulled it off and the smell of rotten eggs disappeared. Harper grumbled. She slipped the IV from her arm and threw it somewhere next to her. She hoisted open heavy eyelids again and glimpsed the hyper-sleek chamber. The space was tight, just big enough for an average-sized adult. A glass door lay above her, and on the other side of it, the flashing beacon intermittently bathed the large cryo-room in that haunting crimson glow. Between the scarlet pulses, the room would descend into darkness, lit only by the feeble lights of the keyboard panels, which stretched across the room, under monitors that were inert and black with sleep. The red alert continued to blare in her ear as Harper attempted to move her legs. She was numb from tailbone to heels, a result of the 3-year hibernation. The nifty LSD-style dreams were one of the perks of Hypersleep 2, a side effect of the hydrogen sulfide. The gas slowed her metabolism, helping her body withstand the long trip on the scantest of nutrients. The rotten egg smell was just another bonus. Christ, Cheryl, enough with the goddamn code alert, please, Harper mumbled. The onboard AI turned off its alert protocol, which, to Harper, had sounded like word salad just a moment before. The rhythmic red light clicked off too, which immersed the room in the twilight-like glow of the keyboard lights. "Welcome back, Captain Gordon," Cheryl said, in an amiable female voice. Harper responded with a guttural noise that was somewhere between a grunt and a moaning. The door above her hissed open. The air in the room permeated her nostrils with the trademark aseptic smell characteristic of sterile environments. She sat up in her cryo bed, hitching forward gently on wobbly arms. Her blonde-dyed dreads fell down around sandy brown shoulders. The white tank top and blue underwear she climbed into the cryo bed with had lost their snugness, despite the small army of electronic muscle stimulators that dotted her body. Harper filled her lungs with the cabin's perfect mix of Earth's atmosphere, taking in a deep breath and stretching her limbs, which were coming back to life. Slowly. For the time being, they moved like gum in molasses. She shook the cobwebs from her head. "Status report," she said. "All systems are nominal, Chief." "Really?" Harper tipped her head back and rolled it on her neck. "Then why wake me?" "Well, as we crossed into the Perseus arm, the ship picked up debris on the starboard side hull." Harper arched her back, getting in a good stretch. She moaned in pleasure. "What kind of debris?" "I'm not sure. My analysis didn't match it to any known life forms in my database." "Life forms?" Cheryl paused. "Yes." Harper shook her head. She needed a hot cup of coffee, one big enough to be hauled around on a dolly, with loads of cream and sugar and a jelly donut. She'd kill for a jelly donut. "What kind of life form?" she said. "That's just it. I don't know." Harper sucked her teeth. "How long has this life form been clinging to the ship?" 3 days. 3 days? Why didn't you wake me earlier?" Harper said, furrowing her brows. "I would have, but I ran the calculations. The debris posed no threat to the integrity of the mission." And what changed? It started growing. Growing? Harper shook her head again and held up a hand. Do you have an image? Yes. A picture of the ship's hull came up on a nearby screen. The image moved easily across it until it came to a stop at a series of bumps. The bulges were backlit, providing a hazy profile view. They were covered in what looked to be hair. And the hair was moving, like it was grasping at things in the void. The protrusions were dark, maybe black or purple, maybe even a deep red. From the camera's vantage point, it was hard to tell. What the hell? Harper squinted and leaned towards the screen. She swung a spindly leg over the edge of the cryo bed, touching a toe to the floor. Careful, Captain. Your muscles. They're not. I know. I'd make a scarecrow jealous. I'll be fine. Shut off the gravity, will you? Cheryl slowed the spinning of the main bay of the ship, causing Harper's belly to lurch. She belched in her mouth. Another delight courtesy of the space trekking business. How big is it? She asked. When it first attached itself to the ship, it was roughly 3 inches in diameter. The AI explained. It remained that size for 3 days. Today, within the last 2 hours, in fact, it more than quadrupled in size. Quadruple. Harper thought for a moment, wiping a lock of dreads from her eyes. The fuzzy mass moved slowly as it slid across her face, the artificial gravity wearing off. So 1 foot across now, she said. Give or take, yes. And you don't know what it is? Harper asked flatly. No, it's not coming up in any known databases. Harper nodded, processing the information. Inside, her belly was waning towards full queasiness. Her body had lifted off the mattress. She grabbed a handrail that was attached to the cryo bed to stabilize herself. Chances of it covering the ship? She asked. I can't say for certain. It could continue to grow at this rate, or grow erratically, or not at all. But if it does grow unchecked, I don't see how it wouldn't. Harper nodded. So at this rate, how long? By my calculations, it could cover the starboard side in 4 days and reach the starboard booster in 5. That's my real concern. Harper bit down on her bottom lip. Her gray eyes twinkled in one of the panel lights. Yeah, we can kiss maneuverability goodbye then. Exactly. And probably our asses. Bingo. Harper fixed a blank stare at the screen as her mind sifted through alternative scenarios. She settled on 2 options, both fundamentally uncomplicated, neither very good. 1. Abort the mission. But that would mean the end of decades of hard work and the dashing of a lifelong dream. 2. Sticking it out and possibly getting it wrong. Dealing with this entity poorly, though, could mean hurtling out into space. For an eternity. Fun, she thought. She chewed on it a while longer. A price Houston of our status, she said. Then prep my suit. I'm going for a walk. I can't clear you for a walk for at least 48 hours, and not before a full physical, Captain. The effects of the hypersleep. Override, Harper said. Directive 24.4. The crisp edge of authority was sharp in her voice. Counter-override. Directive 8 Alpha. Captain, I cannot in good conscience let you. Got him, eh? Just. Harper steadied her breathing. Her pulse throbbed in her ear, and she had raised a clenched fist, unknowingly, ready to slam it against something. Override, she said, Directive 2427. You will not keep me from checking on that debris. Unlike you, I have a heart and lungs and a brain, and along with all of those things, which are near and dear to me, I want to get my ass out to the California Nebula, then back home to Earth. Waiting 48 hours to check on this thing is not an option. A silence loomed between them. The sarcasm is unnecessary, Captain. I may not have the same parts that you do, but I don't want to die out here either. You're not the only one who contemplates their mortality. Harper rolled her eyes. These things had become far too lifelike. Protocol overridden, Cheryl continued. You've got your spacewalk, Captain. But I think it's a bad idea. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. After her stomach completed a few backflips, Harper adjusted to the zero gravity. She was in the belly of it now, floating along the starboard side of the calum, tethered to its polymer skin. Her suit was bulky. Under the Earth's gravitational pull, in her condition, it would have been unwieldy. But in the vacuum of space, she moved gracefully in it, like a mylar-clad athlete. "Coming up on the foreign object debris now," she said. "Roger," Cheryl responded. Harper wasn't sure what to expect. She had been with NASA for 32 years. Fresh out of the candidate program, she was one of only 10 women who were accepted into the program. More than 3 decades later, she'd been to Mars and captained 3 voyages across the solar system. And in all those years, not a single person had encountered an alien life form. Yes, they found bacteria within the crust of Mars. But had they made contact with anything larger than microscopic organisms, ever? No, it had never happened. And here she was, on the verge of discovering a new species. She couldn't tell if she was excited or nervous. Maybe she was just terrified, and in complete denial. The potential downsides, despite the monumental discovery, were especially grim. Harper pulled herself around the hull using the handholds that speckled the ship's shell. She spotted the silhouette of the debris and pulled herself closer. When she swung herself around and on top of it, Harper found a cluster of spiny, spherical objects. They were purplish-black, and each was roughly the size of a tennis ball. Long, slender spines radiated out from every organism's center, reminding her of sea urchins back home, the little critters that gathered in tidal pools along the crisp northern Atlantic shores. But there was a glaring difference: the eye of the center. Each of these creatures had an eye that took up at least half of its body. The sight sent a shudder through Harper. "Christ, are you getting this?" "Crystal clear on this end," Cheryl said. "What the hell are these things?" "I don't know, Chief." Harper leaned in. The set of eyes looked into hers, sending a qualmishness bubbling through her belly. The irises were yellow stippled with green specks. The pupils were as black as the emptiness around her. But they moved. The spiral-shaped openings revolved and spun in a swirling pattern. Harper stared at them in awe, her respirator humming rhythmically in her helmet. Captain, are you okay?" "What?" "Yeah, I'm gonna get a sample." "Be careful." Harper paused. Her eyes narrowed. "Ok, Mom." She prepared her drill and the empty bag that was typically used to hold drill bits. Crude tools, she thought, for collecting a species that will break science. But NASA hadn't planned on her bumping into an undiscovered life form on this trip. She had to make do. She pulled herself closer. The cluster of eyes followed her every move, squishing and squirming in their body sockets. She held the drill over the tiny creatures. "Here goes nothing," she said. She wedged the tip of the drill bit under a specimen on the edge of the group. The bit hardly slipped beneath it. She shifted the bag further up her shoulder, then tried with both hands. Still, nothing. "Damn, these things are stuck on here good. Take your time." Harper shook her head again. "Yes, Mom." Out of some deep-seated Pavlovian habit, decades in the making, Harper nearly flicked on the drill. "Christ," she chuckled, then asked herself if she was nuts. She took a deep breath. Harper gripped the top edge of the animal with her free hand and slid the drill bit under the other side again. She pulled on it. Ouch. Harper recoiled in pain. She looked intently at her glove. It couldn't be, could it? She flicked her hand over to get a better look. No way. It felt like the creature had bitten her. Through the mylar, through the dacron, and through the Teflon-coated glove. As she tried to process the queer sensation, the sight of the ship began teetering in her view. The critters and their curious eyes started spiraling in a blur further and further away. She was tumbling into unconsciousness, and she knew it. Harper's mind gradually became alert again amidst the blackness of catatonia. The profound silence there felt like it pervaded her very soul. An image crystallized. It crackled with color. It was a moving picture of a black hole swallowing up space debris. Among the flotsam, trapped in the thing's maw, was the calum. and undulating across the ship from tip to stern was a purplish-black skin, glowing, rippling, with eyes, thousands of eyes along it, peering back at her. Harper's breath caught in her throat. She watched the black hole suck in the ship, spinning it across its aperture, and down towards the chute of its endless belly. Inside the black hole, Harper could feel something, a being or a consciousness. It spoke to her in a deep, wordless rumble. A piece of it, a feeling maybe, or possibly a warning, slithered across the vivid vision and touched her, the sensation rifling across her chest. It pulled at her. Harper screamed. "No." She jolted awake. Her respirator was whining in her helmet. Her chest heaved with ragged breaths. Harper looked down to find herself floating several yards above the Callum, her tether at full length. Her head was pounding again, and she felt weaker than when she emerged from cryo. She peered down at the ship. The colony had spread. The creatures had commandeered nearly the entire starboard side of the ship. "Captain, are you okay?" "Captain," Cheryl said. Yes, she muttered. The creatures, they've taken over the..." "How?" Her voice cracked with anxiety. "You've been out for more than 3 days. I tried to wake you, but there wasn't much I could do from here." The hairs on the nape of Harper's neck stood on end. She needed to be back on the ship. She needed to get ahead of this. She reached for the tether. Her arm barely moved at her command. Harper tried the other, a similar incapacity. "Captain," Cheryl said tentatively, "between the hypersleep, your unconsciousness, and going without food for as long as you did, your body is terribly weak." Harper blinked uncontrollably, her mind grasping at the situation, trying to make it all stick. "Slow movements, Captain. Take your time." "We don't have time. Time is all we have now." Harper gnashed her teeth. Her insides burned. She wanted to scream. She could hear herself breathing, the respirator purring in her ears. Stars twinkled all around her. At length, she collected herself. Cheryl was right. Mother jokes aside, she was always right. Harper took a deep breath and reached out for the tether. It seemed like an eternity, but all she could do was move, go through the motions, try. While stretching for the lifeline, something below caught her eye. A long row of the prickly creatures, a bit smaller than the rest, were pulsating. They were mid-inception, giving birth to themselves. They encircled the colony, a fresh layer of lethal interlopers, their amber-colored eyes wet and fully formed, their spines stunted and still fleshy. Harper's jaw tightened as a heat rose like a halo through the top of her head. "You bastards," she screamed. "You got 'em. Sons of bitches." Her voice fell to a whisper. She bit her lip, holding back sobs. The blanket of eyes looked up at her coolly, following each of her labored movements. They glowed and they squirmed, then swiveled in their thorny sockets. Story 3. Jeannie never truly got comfortable with the cold, deep-sea station, and it wasn't as though the developers hadn't tried. Though the lights in the facility mimicked the day-night cycle above the water, turning golden in the early mornings and afternoons, brighter around midday, and completely dark at night, it could not distract her from the barren, oppressive murk that embraced the facility, always visible through the facility's glass windows. It was unmistakably unsettling to her, being kilometers below the ocean's surface, completely cut off from the outside. They were so far below that no contact with the outside world was possible, not even an email. They had come here to monitor a geothermal vent on the ocean's floor, to learn more about the tectonic plates of the Earth, as well as collect data about the sea life in the local habitat. What she hated most was the times when she was called to wear the bulky deep-sea diving suit and go walking outside the facility on the ocean's floor. There were lights set up, but nothing could significantly pierce the stifling, oppressive darkness of the deep sea. One time she had been walking to the vent to observe and take some readings, when a thick ocean current began to pull her out of the lit area into the abyss of pitch black that ringed their facility. She had been terrified, but somehow managed to claw her way back into the light, and eventually into the station. The readings could wait another day or two. Today was Sunday, however. Time to relax and forget the troubles of work. They would probably gather around the television, which did not have access to any channels, and play on the gaming console together. She got on well enough with the other members of the science team. David was reliable and dependable, and he always seemed to have a way of pulling her out of depression or anxiety with a few choice words. Sally was an introvert in every sense of the word, but she did not seem to have the same fears that she herself had. And Norton. He was a bit of a klutz. He'd already broken 2 beakers and 1 expensive water sampler by dropping them. But he had a good heart, and she found he was easygoing enough to talk to about just about anything. Walking down the hallway from the lounge area to her room, she ran into David. "Hey, Ginny, you going to join us to see who's the best at that game?" "Yeah, I'm up for it," she replied. "I just want to do my journal entry for the day first, to get it out of the way." The journal entries were done on a computer and were required by all the team members. She sometimes wondered if it wasn't just the ocean being studied, but them too. Were they recording how severe isolation affected people who were cut off from the world? She continued down the hall. On the way she saw Sally leaving her room, but she said nothing, not wanting to get involved in conversation till the journal entry was done. Reaching her room, she used the fingerprint scanner to open the door and went straight to the small desk with the computer. Here, too, fingerprint readings were needed to unlock it. Once done, she opened the journal app and began recording her entry by speaking into the microphone. Today is near the close of half a year of time spent down here below the ocean's surface in Gamma Station. I am still finding it hard to deal with the realities of living here. Maybe it's an undiagnosed, emergent case of claustrophobia. At least I can say I'm grateful for the team members I share this space with. They make it all a little more bearable. In time, she was standing in front of the door to the airlock. She looked in horror at a multiplicity of bloody handprints all over it. Turning the flashlight to the walls of the room she was in, she saw that 3 of the 4 deep-sea diving suits were gone. Had they somehow managed to put on the suits and leave the station? Her suit was still there in the niche in the wall. It was then that she heard the faintest stirrings of sound. The suits had their own power systems, and they had radios built into them. She rushed over to the suit and listened carefully. She heard Norton's voice coming through the speaker. "Hello? Anyone? Hello?" In a rush, she began to operate the suit's radio to reply. "Norton, hi. It's me, Ginny. Tell me what is going on. Where are you?" "I'm outside the station, near the vent. David and Sally. I thought I'd find them out here." Their suits were gone. "Jeannie, are you still in there?" "Yes, Norton. I'm in the station. Listen, I saw bloody footprints leading to the airlocks, and the door had handprints all over it. Whose blood is that?" "What happened?" "Blood," said Norton in surprise. "I didn't see any blood. I heard David and Sally's voices coming from down the hallway where the airlocks were when the power cut out, and when I got there, their suits were missing." She looked at the door again and was shocked to see that there was no longer any blood on it or on the floor. She knew she hadn't imagined it. The trail had led her here, but buried deep within her consciousness, it came to her, was there anybody else to verify it? If a tree falls in the forest, if one woman witnesses something odd, who's to say she witnessed anything at all? Once again, she spoke through the radio to Norton. "How did you even get out there? The station's got no power. None of the doors should be working. There's a backup generator that I switched on. It powers all the major doors in the facility. There should be some way to activate the emergency lights too, but I couldn't figure it out." She spoke firmly. "Norton, if you can't find them out there, then hurry up and come back here. I need your help." There was silence for a few moments before Norton's voice came once again through the radio, sounding strangely mesmerized. "Jeannie, I have to find them. They're out here, and I think I know where they went. I've got to follow them. Norton. Norton, what are you doing? Norton?" There was no further response. It was at this moment that her torch began to dim. She looked closely at it, exasperated by the failure of one thing after yet another. Eventually it waned to the faintest glimmer of light. She sat down on the cold floor of the station and began to cry in racking sobs. It seemed everyone had gone, leaving her here, alone in this sunken tomb. And how long could she last without power? The station needed to be heated to support life. Already it had gotten tangibly colder. Suddenly, a noise roused her. Quick footsteps coming from further down the hallway. "Hello," she called out. And then from the other end of the hallway, the same quick footsteps. She should be the only one in here, she thought to herself. Again, the truth of her isolated condition confronted her, and she could not be sure if the footsteps were even real. Did it matter? They were real to her. If you turn and are confronted with your worst fear, does it matter if it is an apparition or flesh and blood? Feverishly, she began to put on the deep-sea suit. All she knew was that she wanted to be with her teammates. Staying here alone, or perhaps not alone, was not possible, not for her. In about 2 minutes she was geared up for benthic walking, and with no desire to stay any longer, pushed the button for the airlock to open. Once inside, she pushed the button on the interior, and the door to the station shut, followed by the airlock filling with water, and the door to the outside opening. The sea was a Stygian black, and the water was like syrup, thick, always resisting her every movement. There was a trail of weak lights which directed the course of the diver towards the vent, an area which was better illuminated. She travailed slowly across the ocean floor, knowing all along that if she were out of her suit, she would be instantly crushed by the water pressure. Once again, she tried the radio again. Norton. David? Sally. Just silence. Continuing her slow pilgrimage, she eventually saw up ahead the glowing vent, but there were figures in front of it. As she slowly pushed through the enveloping, viscous water, she made out 3 of the facility's deep-sea diving suits standing at the edge of the vent. David, Norton, Sally. Is that you? The absence of a reply weighed on her, a great burden of fear and loneliness, and looking at them eerily lined up in formation, as though for some kind of unholy ceremony, took away any kind of comfort she might have felt upon seeing them. There was something about the way they were all standing there, looking down. A strange feeling began to rise in her. What held them transfixed? Fighting the strain of walking through the dense ocean, she eventually found herself standing next to them. After moving to the front of them, their faces could be seen, illuminated from inside the suits, each one with their eyes closed. Suddenly, their voices came in unison through the radio, their eyes still closed. Descend. The chasm beckoned. She thought of her family, her would-be boyfriend, the friends she had made over the years, now all seemingly a million miles away. Her team were comparatively just acquaintances. If they all walked into the precipice, would anyone notice? Would anyone care? Here they were at the ends of the earth, truly alone. Would they be remembered? Would they be forgotten? And then she wondered, what was down there? Paradise? Hell? Maybe she had in fact died the moment she left the shore. To be alone, abandoned, unaccounted for, how would she even know if she hadn't already crossed over? Her voice came, solemn, and as cold as the furthest reaches of space, as she stood on the edge of the void. Descend.